welcome to tonight's stream. I see Derek is already in the chat. Before you start this, please draw me a traditional tattoo style poker card. I am a tattoo fan. I'm a tattoo fan too. I don't honestly know enough about poker. I mean, I kind of know a little bit about playing cards, but as far as what you specifically mean by traditional tattoo style poker card, not totally clear on that. And then you would also like a tribal tattoo design. I kind of vaguely remember that because I was around in the 90s. So we might come up with something along those lines a little bit later. But what we are starting with today, and the main thing we're working on in tonight's stream, is some Zamo the Destroyer stuff. I thought I would start out with a cartoon I did this week, or pardon me, one that Zamo did this week. And that is a portrait of yours truly, Technical Support Monkey. This kind of gets into a little bit more of the podcast era for that, where Zamo was talking about Technical Support Monkey, who did all the work on the podcast. But I thought it would be fun to have this at the back end of the first Zamo the Destroyer book that I am, comic collection that I am working on right now. So not a flattering portrait, but you know, as far as iguanas are concerned, us humans all look alike anyways. So that is that. The first thing we will ink will be one that we missed in the last Wednesday stream. I'm just shuffling around also because I can give a shot at the poker card. It's not really, oops. I just realized why is, okay, there we go. YouTube was doing something a bit weird. I'm looking at OBS as if I wasn't streaming, but I see it in the actual YouTube window off to the side. So, let's see here. Tribal style tattoos. Well, I mean, the stereotypical one would have looked, and I just realized I left my non-dip pens over on the other side, but kind of the stereotypical would have looked kind of like your barbed wire type of motif. So say something like that. And of course, I'm assuming when you say tribal style, you mean like North American tribal style, as opposed to, you know, like say Samoan tribal tattoos or Maori tribal tattoos, or you know, actual tribal stuff, you know, from actual tribes. Of course, it'd be a very, very different sort of look, but I do seem to recall you commonly had kind of a barbed wire sort of thing, and I am not I'm not super well versed in it. I just saw loads of them back in the day. But where you kind of have these sort of swooping kind of shapes that would then be filled in. Yeah, it's funny. There was a time, it was about 25 years ago, when I actually thought, oh, maybe I'll end up getting into tattooing or whatnot. And I just realized my drawing style, like, not super, super inclined to that sort of thing, but it was kind of towards the end of the tribal style fad. So be that kind of those kind of shapes and then filled in. Like I said, I would have to look into a little bit more like poker card style tattoo, how that would overlap with between tribal traditional tattoo style poker cards and the other, because definitely it's not my area of expertise. So but I got a little bit of tribal shapes. So let me now, hopefully that's going to be in focus. Our first drawing of the evening is going to be one that I kind of glossed over last time, a couple weeks ago. I did, sorry, by the way, that I missed last week's Zamo the Destroyer stream. I had kind of forgotten when I scheduled my streams that that was Canada Day, and then I had some running around and other stuff to do on Canada Day, and it ended up kind of running a little later than I thought. And next thing I know, it's like, I don't know, it was like 5:30 or something. I'm like, okay, I am nowhere near ready to go live in an hour. So that's why I made my little, sorry, I forgot it's Canada Day announcement, and then postponed, rescheduled the stream. But anyways, I will try and pay a little bit more attention to those sorts of observances. In fact, speaking of holidays, I spent most of this afternoon starting to buckle down and work on the Noah's Archipelago Noah Book of Days project, making lists of the different holidays. I think I'm up to like 3 weeks into June. So now it's like, oh, I was worried that I wasn't going to have enough content for this book, or that was going to be really thin. And then now I'm like, now I'm worried it's going to be a 400-page book. I'm going to have to at some point just kind of go like, okay, maximum 3 observances listed per day, really pare them down, maybe even kind of knock out, or kind of narrow in specifically on the ones that Noah would pay attention to. Of course, that once you make that decision, then there's a good chance that somebody will look and go, hey, my favorite holiday is missing, or, such and such that's so important to my culture is missing. And it's like, yeah, but you're not a cartoon, dude. It's like, I just had to narrow it down to, or I will have to narrow it down to specifically the ones that I could see on Noah's Archipelago, on Noah Thorson's radar, right? And he does love a lot, but, and then the other thing is like, certain holidays that are popular now, you kind of get this attitude of, okay, well, if you're not in that group, you shouldn't be appropriating, yada, yada, yada. So kind of becomes a little easier to kind of skip it. Some of them are going to definitely be damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situations. But I think I'm going to try and kind of narrow it down, and then I got to decide, for once I've narrowed down the list of holidays, I have to decide which of them are going to get illustrations, which will get like a blurb, which will simply get, which will get, yeah, because some that would get an illustration, I might not necessarily write a blurb about, or there may be like an old Noah comic from a couple years ago, and I might throw that in there if there's space, but not necessarily write a blurb about it, you know what I mean? Anyways, it's still kind of early in the book planning stages, so. Anyways, this, what I'm actually drawing today, back to Zamo the Destroyer, I skipped over it last week because I hadn't kind of planned how I had drawn this illustration, the first one of Zamo standing on the radio mixing board yelling into the mic. And I inked that, and then I realized, wait a minute, if I now ink this one, I'm going to have my forearm in the wet ink. So that's why I skipped this one. Anyways, but the context of it is in the story, or it's kind of more like a fictional lecture that Zamo's giving. The World According to Zamo. Zamo explains to these university students at the University of British Columbia, I'm very famous, So, although Zamo admits it's fame amongst iguanas, that humans aren't cool enough to know who Zamo is. So, anyways, I thought I had this vision of Zamo kind of being mobbed and doing the big time thing, and then saying like, sorry, no autographs. So Got Zamo in the fur coat, and the shades. And kind of realized the stars bounce radiating out of Zamo's head kind of make it look more like Zamo has a concussion rather than being famous, but whatever. Zamo's a lot more likely to give somebody else a concussion, or at least try. I mean, realistically, it's an iguana who probably weighs all of 10 pounds. It's a little hard for an iguana to give someone a concussion, although I'm sure Zamo has tried. Kind of needs a bouncer or security guard detail, but yeah, whatever. So pretty sure somewhere in the depths of the old Zamo comics, there was a bit of a plot line about Zamo insisting on getting a bunny fur coat and Georgie having to go to the leather goods store to find the pelts and make it for Zamo, and then hoping to not run into any of her like vegan friends on the while doing this. After all, Zamo, being from the rainforest, wouldn't really be evolved to be running around outside in Vancouver in half the year, 3/4 of the year or so. Zamo always said that Zamo had wanted to go to Los Angeles, but that didn't work out. We got Zamo's feet. Iguanas kind of have weird looking feet. I think I've talked about that before. We're just going to see some toes poking out. And now I have these. These are presumably other iguanas because Zamo admits that she's only famous, as far as iguanas go, or that only iguanas are cool enough to know who Zamo is. I'll just show a couple pairs of hands kind of reaching out with the pens and whatnot. So that is our first drawing of the night. Short and sweet. And now let's get into some more. I think the next one on my list, excuse me. Yes, Zamo. I think I mentioned before that Zamo is supposed to be an anthropologist on one of the previous Zamo the Destroyer streams. There, let's bring this down a little bit more. have to put a line or two in before I do anything else, because otherwise the camera isn't going to focus with just the non-photo blue pencil. So it's kind of a little bit weird. That might be better. And autofocus again. There. So Zamo is supposedly a postdoctoral candidate or postdoc in anthropological studies from the very prestigious Iguanid University of the Jungle in Colombia. It's kind of like Harvard for iguanas, except Zamo insists that Harvard is, a shithole. That the IUJ is very prestigious, unlike Harvard. So, and what I'm drawing on around here are iguanas have these kind of bumps on the back of their neck. So that'd be kind of a gray. And then there's the lower jaw and the dewlap and the arm and the stripe behind the armpit. So Zamo, anyways, claims to be doing anthropological fieldwork. How reliable these research conclusions are, well, probably not any worse than most anthropologists. Yeah, that's kind of mean. Certain of them, we'll just say. Certain of them are unreliable, and Zamo's research is no worse than theirs. Zamo's idea of research is, what I'm drawing here, Zamo's watching a daytime soap opera and taking notes. As for the character's behavior, apparently is indicative of standard human behavior. So there's that. But then also, like, Zamo does things like go to the next door neighbors and ask them what species of monkey they are descended from. And when they get all offended, Zamo says, "Oh, that's okay. Oh, you don't know? That's okay. I think you look like Reese's monkeys. I'll just put that down." So questionable research methodologies, we'll just say. Very highly suspect. But there's a point in the lecture where Zamo references watching TV for research. So this is what Zamo is doing in this little drawing. All these drawings are probably going to be squished down to like that size. So anyways. I forget which stream it was on nowadays or at this point, but it seems to me in the last couple months I've talked about how once upon a time I was an anthropology major. So we don't need to rehash that. It's supposed to be a girl with very curly hair. Probably doesn't really look like that, but I guess if I make her brunette, we can get the sense of the hair movement. Or if you prefer, this actor is talking to a potted plant, like whatever. Actually, it's probably funnier if it's supposed to be a potted plant where Zamo is taking notes and saying the humans express their desires for fertility to the fertility gods by communing with potted plants, and they're not even edible ones that taste good. So this is just kind of swirling the pen around and you get that kind of texture. I'm going to switch to a wider pen because then I can fill in the black frame of the TV in a much more efficient, or depending on your point of view, lazier manner. But I like to think of it as being efficient. And then we'll go back to the thinner nib and put in some line work. I'm envisioning this as being kind of an IKEA style TV stand cabinet type of thing. So we'll assume kind of light wood. Well, wood. Yeah. Well, they do. Hey, that's going to be perfect as the knobs. We'll just put it that way. That's what I get for making fun of some of the cruds sold by a former employer. Many, many years ago, I worked for IKEA. Actually, kind of enjoyed that job, except I worked in one of the back end departments that was a lot of heavy lifting, which I was not really, honestly, really not suited to. But it is what it is. Anyways. It was a very, very long time ago. So, yeah. Anyways, they do have some stuff there that is actually made out of wood and not just, particle board. But it's mostly particle board. Anyways, so where would the feet on this one go? Well, let's assume that the feet on this kind of echo the feet on the TV, and then we'll just kind of scribble in a shadow, and then we can call this drawing done. So that's 2. And we're not even half an hour through. Uh-oh. We might get into trouble. I think I have... I've got 3 more drawings blue lined. I mean, I guess worst case scenario, I can draw something other. Train on O. Draw me the other Sailor Guardians from Sailor Moon. Draw Sailor Pluto and Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, please. Well, on the grounds that I am kind of ahead of schedule, I will. Normally, I will just sort of say for future reference, I don't normally take drawing requests. And if I do, that would be on the Saturday stream. But as I mentioned, things are going a little faster than I planned. Now, I am not somebody who's overly familiar with Sailor Moon, so I'm going to have to grab a reference image. So you wanted Sailor Pluto was the first one you mentioned. Sailor Pluto. And I'll also warn you, being that anime isn't really my style, it's probably not going to look quite the way you were hoping. So with that caveat in mind, we will give it a shot. So Sailor Pluto has dark green hair. long dark green hair, and let me try and find one that's big enough so I can actually see her. So looks like she's got a bun up there, and she's got her little headdress thing. And the little nose, and very little mouth, and kind of a pointy chin. And then the super long hair. Let's see here. So she's got a necklace that has a tiny little star on it. And dark color. And she's got gloves on, I guess. And this is some sort of a staff. All right. This is a very weird hand position. Oh, I think she's got her hand twisted. And however this sort of key thing staff goes. So skirt. And then her hair is like crazy long and more voluminous than you can get even with extensions. But that's the fun thing with cartooning, is that you can kind of do whatever you want. So there you go. Let me put that down. I will be getting back. We'll be moving back towards just working on my own stuff, partly because I'm doing more random drawings in this sketchbook, and we now have wet ink on it. So there you go. Sailor Pluto, drawn from a very, very quick drawing from reference online. And let's get back to my book that I'm working on, Zamo the Destroyer. So, there you go. So, then we're moving on. One of the things that Zamo mentions in this lecture kind of story that I'm illustrating, I'll just drag it over so it's actually on the frame, is that Zamo was complaining about a judge that gave Zamo a whole bunch of community service for trying to set the local mall Santa on fire. So got the very unjust sentence of 50 hours of community service, which Zamo complained about, and then it got bumped up to 100. Though Zamo does have kind of a valid complaint, which is that the Criminal Code of Canada always says that a person who does blah, 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 blah has committed an offense. Nowhere in there does it ever say anything about when an iguana does something supposedly bad. So technically speaking, it is true that iguanas should not get sentenced to community service for trying to set things on fire because the Criminal Code of Canada does not mention at any point anything about iguanas and iguana behavior. But the judge clearly decided to interpret the law broadly. So. I hope I spelled community correctly. I think I did, sort of. So. By the way, I would highly recommend that if you are in court and a judge says under any circumstances really in court, whether you're there as a witness or whatever, you probably shouldn't say "what up yours" to the judge. You will probably end up with community service or potentially being jailed for contempt of court. So don't do what Zamo's doing here, but I think at some point I'll probably have to put like a little disclaimer or something. Whether it would be, well, in the video description probably won't work, but possibly on the screen or something about requests and whatnot, because for like the back half of a Saturday or something where I'm kind of doodling, that's one thing. When I'm actually working on one of these projects, I'm working on books that I'm getting prepared to eventually sell. So I kind of don't really want to be setting up. Like I've been lenient about like, okay, if somebody asks something, and if it's quick to draw, sometimes I'll kind of pop over and just draw it. I'll have to do that one after. But I might kind of have a thing about like if anybody asks for something in the chat, it's like, okay, at the very end, like you may have to come back or watch for the whole stream or something like that. But generally speaking, it's not really a request show. So, or I may do like one day of the week where it would be like a send in your requests or something. That's also the sort of thing where, monetization would possibly play a factor. But anyways, that's kind of currently neither here nor there. My thing is kind of more working on what I'm working on, right? And putting it up to show the process. Then we've got the judge's robe. Plus then it's not really fair to other viewers and, whether it's live viewers or replay viewers, but if somebody's seen the world according to Zamo, read the description and gone, oh, okay, I think I want to watch that. And then when they tune in, I'm not drawing that, I'm drawing something completely different, so from a fairness perspective as well. But I could definitely see like, okay, if I finish early, maybe the last half hour of the stream or something. I don't know. I have to think about that. So anyways, let's carry on with the judge. Might also be something because I do need to get around to setting up like a Ko-Fi or something. So it might be something where it's like I know I can think of one of the comedy shows I watch where now granted they have several thousand. I think they've got like 45,000 subscribers, and any given live show probably 1,000 on YouTube and 1 or 2,000. Well, definitely one over on Rumble type of thing. And their thing now is like they'll say like they don't read the chat, or they won't read comments from the chat. And what they'll do is if you want your comment read now, it's like it's got to be like X dollar, X amount or higher. It's like, granted, they're monetized and they have a big following, so don't necessarily want to go in that direction at this point, but perhaps for drawing requests, that would make sense. It's like, okay, well, anyways, that's something that we can kind of consider how I'm going to approach it, and then probably make an announcement on the Saturday recap video, that sort of thing. Of course, the con for accepting requests, even from, that is if it's something that I don't normally know how to draw, so then I've got to stop the show and look for a reference or whatever. But that's kind of, it'd be interesting to maybe have one show every so often where it was like that was the purpose, like throw whatever at me and try and draw it on the fly, and then it would be kind of comedic effect if it looks bad, because it's kind of like, could be kind of like a stump the cartoonist thing. I don't know. I'll think about it. I'm kind of trying to get just the sense here of some wood grain, because usually the judge is bench and whatnot is raised up and has a wood front or a veneer front. Who knows? Maybe it's like IKEA and it's just a picture of wood. But and I kind of forgot about this blurb when I did this one, so I'm gonna have to just Photoshop out this little chunk here. So there is drawing number 3 for The World According to Zamo. And I also have to remember, now that I'm starting at 7, I go kind of till 9. But so it's not as late in the show as I feel like it is. Oh, yeah. So I think this is the next one to go. It doesn't matter of the exact order. So then Zama goes on to talk about the formation of the universe. That God was bored and made a big explosion for the entertainment value, and that produced all the goo that we evolved out of and whatnot, including the planets congealing. And then Zama makes reference to Pluto being a frozen hellhole, and nobody wants to anything to do with Pluto. And then Zama says, well, maybe the Swedes do. They like cold weather for some reason. Zamo hates winter, right? Being an iguana. So I had this vision of an IKEA on planet Pluto. So I need to take a quick reference again on Pluto. Right. That's the dark spot. Got it. Momentarily going like, okay, am I backwards? No, I'm not. the background to get it all black. We will definitely be using the brush to fill things in. But first we need to get this Viking ship drawn that is coming to Pluto to restock the Pluto IKEA. Space Viking ship. Viking spaceship, I guess, depending on how you want to phrase it. This resupply ship has all the flat packs for sure, but they're not exactly well laid out. It's a little bit more like what the parts of the warehouse that aren't open to the public sometimes look like. Especially the ones that, where they store like parts and other, other stuff. Maybe it's better now. Anyways, there we got that. So now we got a black in space, right? And we are going to do that with our friend the brush, because that is the fastest way to do it. So I'm not going to worry about if there's some little specks of white left, because those could be stars after all. But that's too much white left for sure. Be paranoid and hit that. Make sure things are focused. Probably leave the very bottom until the end, just because I need to kind of hold on to the paper. So I'm gonna have somewhere for my fingers to rest. Really doesn't pick up in the microphone, but I suddenly hear helicopters overhead. Now, there is a major hospital not far. There's a highway, so it could be that. But there's also forests around here, and at least one arsonist running around, because there's been quite a few fires over the last couple years, mostly in town, though, that the papers just said was ruled suspicious or was ruled arson, and then you just never hear about it reported on ever again. So, apparently the other night, one of the local hills had a bit of a forest fire, although I heard they had put it out, so I don't know whether it's that or who knows, but I think it's safe to say where I'm at, it's not hobbyist helicopters doing loops around the town. There we have it. IKEA in space on the planet Pluto. Now I've got one other drawing prepped. I'm just gonna wipe this plastic down. Some of that's already dry, that's fine. And that is Zamo talking with glee about, Zamo's timeline's a little messed up because Zamo claims that her ancestors, the glorious T-Rex, which iguanas aren't actually descended from T-Rex, but that's Zamo's version. So anyways, that's her truth. And T-Rex certainly wasn't around when our mammal ancestors began, especially not humanoid mammal ancestors. But, never let a detail like that get in the way. But Zamo was talking about T-Rexes stomping on human, on early cave humans or whatever. So we're going to draw that because after all, the world according to Zamo is according to Zamo. Whether it's scientifically valid or not, never mind. So we're going to draw a big old T-Rex foot. Stomping on a little half rat, half humanoid thing. I guess one of Ricky's ancestors. But I know. They now say that T-Rex had feathers and whatnot, but Zamo doesn't believe in that. Zamo thinks that's a bunch of stupid human propaganda. So, trying to deny the reality of the glorious reptile empire or some such whatever. So, we're drawing T-Rex with scaly feet. Of course, someone thinks that humans always have bananas. So, our caveman ancestor has to have a banana, therefore. Can't remember if T-Rex are supposed to have like a dew claw type of thing, but we'll just assume for now that I've drawn it, we'll assume they do. So need to put in a big T-Rex shadow. Excuse me. Excuse me. So there you have it. Now, I think that is all I've got for today. Let me have a quick look in my handy dandy Zamo folder. Yeah, it is. Okay, well, for next week, I know I should probably have at least six of the half sheets ready to go. But let's review again what we did during the show for the world according to Zamo. So I think I've mentioned on previous streams, what this is going to be is I'm illustrating a podcast episode I had done from quite a few years ago now. That was Zamo explaining the origin of the universe to humans who apparently, because we were not properly educated in history. So it's kind of a spoof, but Zamo was originally done back when I was involved with CITR Radio in Vancouver, 101.9 FM. Every January, they do 24 hours of radio art. So this was my block this particular year. Anyways, so we have Zamo getting asked for autographs and saying no autographs because Zamo's very famous, you understand. So that was one. And then we had Zamo watching TV for anthropological research, taking notes, presumably watching the trashiest TV in order to claim that that's what our species is like. And then Zamo kind of has a little sideline complaining about the judge that gave Zamo 100 hours of community service. So Zamo was hoping to count this lecture as one of the hours. And then Zamo gets into explaining the origin of the universe with God being bored and making the Big Bang for entertainment value, and then all of the planets congealed out of the sludge, and mentioning that Pluto is a cold, frozen hellhole that nobody would be interested in going to except maybe the Swedes. So now we have an illustration of there's an IKEA on Pluto and the Viking ship taking all the flat pack boxes to restock it. And then we have Zamo mentioning about our mammal ancestors having been stomped on by Zamo's T-Rex ancestors. Again, T-Rex is Iguanas are not descended from T-Rex, but Zamo likes to think so. So that was that. The IKEA one just kind of cracks me up. Anyways, so I will leave this here while I kind of, first of all, I'm going to throw out my subscribe if you like what I'm drawing. Then do subscribe. I live stream 6 nights a week at 7 p.m. Pacific. And Monday through Friday, those are my projects. I've got 5 different projects I'm working on, so I'm mostly inking stuff for that, for those. Mondays, it's currently, it's part of actually a larger project called, I'll just switch back to here. On Mondays, it's part of a larger project I'm working on that'll be called A Year in Ratsville, where I have short stories I've written featuring my characters, Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat, and his friends. And I've written those. They're narrated by Ricky, and then I'm going to illustrate them, right? So, but the first of those stories we're working on is called Thanksgiving in Ratsville. So I think it's going to be about 30 illustrations in total, and I think we're about 6 or 7 in. So we're not quite a quarter of the way through. So that's the Monday night streams. The Tuesday night streams, I've got 1 more week of illustrating cast portraits for Noah's Archipelago. It's for a book, the first comic collection, because it was a web comic, and it's going to be becoming graphic novels and other book projects, but I'm going to be releasing comic collections. I think there's going to be 4 or 5 of those in total. So nearly finished the first one, and the last 2 illustrations I need to do are a portrait of Noah and a portrait of his wife Ruth for the kind of the meet the cast section. I've been doing that the last 2 weeks, so next week will be the last of those streams, and then I've got probably actually going back to previously on Tuesday I was doing the Noah's Archipelago Book of Days, which was originally going to be a calendar project, but anyways, it's becoming a book. I've been working on that. I think I'm going to be ready to start doing more illustrations for that. So week after that, we'll go back to the Noah's Book of Days, which I was previously doing on Tuesday. And actually, I know, actually Derek has asked a couple times in chat on different streams about color. Most of my stuff, as you can tell, I normally do pen and ink, so it's normally black and white. But Noah's Book of Days is going to be a full color book. So if you want color, that's going to be the Tuesday night streams, not next week. That's still black and white, but after that. Wednesday night, we work on Zamo the Destroyer stuff. So I expect I'll be working on illustrating the world according to Zamo for at least another month and probably like 6 weeks. Because I think there's going to be like 30 or 40 of these little illustrations. I think we are now, actually, we may be done about 9 of them. So we're about a quarter of the way through. Thursdays, I'm working currently on a coloring book project, which is Noah's Archipelago. I've got about another month of live streams for that. Tomorrow night it's the A to Z of Noah's job history. So tomorrow night we are going to be drawing, Koi Fish Wrangler and quality control taste tester at a candy factory. And then I've got a few other drawings that are not jobs, but that are part of the storyline for that coloring book. So that'll be another 6 weeks or so. After that, I think I'm going to be illustrating kind of a spoof of an old, spoof of like when journalists try and be serious when they're writing about puff pieces about rock stars. So anyways, I had been going to do that on the Tuesday night stream, but I think I'll wait a few weeks and do it on the Thursday before I start working on the first Noah's Archipelago graphic novel, because I still have to finish writing that. And then Fridays, I ink pages from my Ricky B Goes to Sea graphic novel. And then there's 2 other Ricky graphic novels waiting after that. And then on my Saturday streams, Saturday, I do a quick show and tell of of the art I've done over the week. So that'll include stuff that I did off stream when it isn't spoilers for books, right? And this week I actually have a few things to show that I can show. So there'll be that, and then at the end on the Saturday streams, the last half hour, or sometimes up to an hour, that's when I do doodling and whatnot. So if you have requests for things you'd like me to draw, the Saturday stream is the one to ask me on that. Like I said, I'm kind of thinking in my head, I might make a little note with like a new policy about that or whatnot. It's like, I want to be accommodating and all this, and it's great when people are interested in seeing how I would draw something, but at the same time, if I'm working on, if it's a stream for a certain project, you know. Anyways, we'll kind of think about how we do that. So anyways, hope you've enjoyed tonight's drawings. And for anyone who's tuning in a little later in the stream or whatever, if you want to watch the whole thing, I'll be saving it as private as soon as I end the stream. And then tomorrow, when YouTube is done finishing processing the video quality back up to whatever standard, then I'll make it public again so you can rewatch afterwards. And in terms of, let me just pull up my ending stuff. In terms of the last my little show outro music, where I have like the link to a different playlist you can watch other videos, it'll be the Zamo the Destroyer playlist, so you can watch other streams I've done drawing Zamo stuff. And you know, I talk about lore sometimes and what's going on with Zamo, the history of the project and all that. So thank you for watching. Hope to see you again real soon, and bye for now.